Good afternoon to everybody. Your Excellencies, the British Ambassador, Mr. Matthew Lodge, Ambassador Mr. Michael Christidis, the Economic Counselor of the USA Embassy in Athens, Eric Holmgreen, IENE partners and associates, dear colleagues. It gives me great pleasure, as usual, to welcome you to this year's Southeast Europe Energy Dialogue, which is the 14th such event which IENE first started here in Thessaloniki in 2007. Over the years, this conference has undergone many changes, both in terms of structure and content, with the prevailing themes ever-changing depending on circumstances and priorities in the broader European and Southeast European regional agenda. So, in the first years of this event, electricity liberalization, energy supplies, renewable energy sources, which were then starting to get noticeable in the grid, energy infrastructure, oil and gas, electricity, interconnections dominated the agenda. With this changing gradually as the years passed, to more pressing matters like decarbonization, lowering of emissions, and the new targets and means of how to achieve this. What has not changed, though, over these years is the overall objective of the conference, which is becoming a fertile ground for encouraging cooperation and peaceful coexistence between the various countries in the region, which, as we all know, have political differences and at times even experienced conflict or hostilities. However, we strongly believe at IENE that energy in its various facets can be and often is a unifying force which enables and enhances cooperation between countries, whatever their opposing views at geopolitical level. A good example being Greece and Turkey. Many people are not realizing this, but Greece and Turkey since 2007 have a gas interconnector which has been working continuously without any major problems. Electricity. We have a 400 kilowatt transmission line operating successfully over the last 7-8 years. The countries are trading extensively in refined oil products. On several occasions, Greece has supplied Turkey with vast quantities of diesel, for example, and at other times, other types of fuels, and vice versa in certain occasions. So, it can be done. And of course, this applies to other countries in the region, especially the restive Western Balkans, where again we see good signs of cooperation, where energy community has played a very important role, as Mr. Slavko Neikov, who used to head the energy community since the start, can tell you very clearly. So, in addition to such organizations like Energy Community, European Union, the Black Sea Council and all that, IENE plays also a role in trying to bring countries, organizations and people together. In today's conference, there are a number of subject areas which stand out and need special attention. First and foremost, energy security, where the Southeast European region has a pivotal role to play in a European context. As we're in the second year of the war in Ukraine, and in spite of the strengthening of infrastructure, the provision of normal gas supplies is far from assured. Hence, the strategic role of gas in the overall energy mix is a point of interest. And of course, it comes in direct conflict with EU's goals for decarbonization. And I expect that this contradiction will be hotly debated in the various sessions. the issue here is how to reconcile the need for energy security and the lowering of emissions, and this emerges clearly as a key challenge, which applies not only in Southeast Europe, but of course in Europe at large. The operation of electricity markets and the European target model and how effective this is at times of crisis, like the one we went through, is yet another issue which is of concern to energy companies and to governments. Other topical issues include the further penetration of renewable energy sources into the electricity grids and the urgent need for their upgrading and modernization. Because without effective, operational, modern, with very fast response electricity grids, there is no way that renewables can penetrate more into the system, with batteries or without batteries. And I expect this is one of more issues which will be debated in this conference. Also, the anticipated use of hydrogen and biomethane as substitutes of gas will be discussed together with the challenges posed by the need for greater energy efficiency, especially in the building sector, and the challenges posed by the spread of electric vehicles. Don't forget that electric vehicles, they may be clean in their everyday use, but they exert a pressure, and they will be exerting even higher pressure onto the grid because they get electricity from the grid. So the more electric vehicles we have, the higher electricity consumption we have. So this is a matter of great interest. This year, we have enriched the conference content by introducing an ambassadors forum, and thank you very much, ambassadors, for being here today, and also a country review and a fireside chat. And we hope that with these new additions, the idea of this conference is further enhanced. So, without further ado, I would like to ask John Roberts, who is the rapporteur of this conference, to take the floor also and say a few introductory remarks. John.
First of all, and most importantly, my thanks to Kostas and to all the team at IENE for arranging this conference and for inviting me. Efaristo. We have a double dilemma. It's acute in Europe, and it's particularly acute in Southeastern Europe. The dilemma is very simply, we need to get out of fossil fuels as quickly as possible in order to combat climate change. But as a result of the war in Ukraine, the need for fossil fuels is more acute than ever. How do we manage? I'm not so sure that the two are going to be in contradiction for much longer. I think it's reasonable to assume that once Europe gets through the next winter, the worst of the immediate crisis caused by the Ukraine war will be over, almost regardless of whether the war is continuing, and we all hope that it will not be continuing a year from now. The reason, I think, is simple. We had a surprisingly good last year for gas. Russia continued to supply gas for the first half of the year. There was a whole lot of new LNG coming online from all around the world. The Asian market was still depressed, not least as a result of China and COVID. And above all, we had a surprisingly warm winter. So we got through, and we have gas in storage now. But there's going to be no or very little Russian gas into Europe this year. There's very little fresh LNG coming on the market. There's much greater competition coming in from the Far East. And we are left with an uncertainty, of course. We have no idea what kind of a winter we will face. But whatever winter we face, simply because we have to, we'll get through it. And after that, I don't want to actually use the phrase sort of plain sailing, but things get a lot easier. Why? Because we start to see the benefit of the vast increases in investment in renewables. Last year was a record in which, in 2022, there was greater investment in renewables than in traditional fossil fuels. Now, the next speaker is from the IEA, which today printed out its World Energy Investment report for 2023. And what does it say? Bottom line, investment in clean energy, $1.7 trillion expected this year. Investment in oil, gas and coal, just over 1 trillion. This is a remarkable turnaround, not least since the return on investments in renewables is traditionally much quicker than that for investment in fossil fuels. So I think we'll get by and have a better 2024, but we might have a really difficult winter this year. Why is that important? Because very simply, any country or any supplier that wants to help Europe out as a whole needs to take action in order to be seen to be helping cope with the immediate problem, because if it isn't seen to help with the immediate problem, Europe is not going to be interested in looking into it to help with the longer term problem. This particularly applies to gas supplies. Is there anything else to add? Not really. We've come here for dialogue. That means we're going to get not one, not even two, as one should get with a dialogue, points of view, but many. But that's the whole point of these conferences. We know that Southeast Europe is both energy constrained and particularly reliant not simply on fossil fuels, but on coal and lignite, the elements that most need to be phased out in favor of renewables. But we also knew that the renewables transformation is coming much faster than we expect. And that's good news. I'm going to leave you with one final point. I've been lucky enough to be associated with the IENE for quite some time. But I had nothing to do with the draft paper that has been circulated in advance. So therefore, when I say that if you turn to page 14 of the paper on key energy issues in Southeast Europe, the identification of the key factors facing the region in developing a sustainable energy transition, the summary could simply not be improved. It is the best short description I have seen of the issues facing the region. Thank you.
Mr. Apostolos Petropoulos, from Paris, from the IEA headquarters. Good afternoon, Apostolos. Apostolos is an electrical engineer. He has spent a lot of time in modeling, and he's working as a modeler at the IEA, correct, Apostolos?
Yes.
Correct.
Hello, everyone.
So welcome, and we're going to listen with great attention what you have to say.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Many thanks once again for the invitation, and congrats to ENF for organizing another interesting workshop. So I will start a little bit about setting the skin on what we have seen happening on the energy markets. And of course, already the previous speakers, they talk about what is happening in Russia. And as you can see from the figure, Russian oil and gas revenues have declined over 50%. And the share of EU gas demand, of Russian share in the EU gas demand has declined 40% this year. Of course, on the other side of the picture, we are talking a lot about the clean technologies. And what we have monitored in 2022, we see a big growth in renewable capacity additions. In 2022, they reached 350 gigawatt, from which 100 are wind and the rest are mainly solar. Heat pump sales have increased considerably. It's over 10% of global market, with some EU countries to record over 30% year-on-year increase. Once again, a big story for electric car sales. I will show you later about how it is translated on concrete shares. And energy efficiency improvements are twice as fast as compared with what we have seen on the last 2 years. Of course, this didn't prevent us to have an increase on global energy-related CO2 emissions, which they grew around 1% last year, and they reached around 37 gigatons of CO2. But what we see is a big decoupling between the increase on CO2 emission versus the economic prosperity, where on the one side we have around 1% increase, and on GDP we see over 3% increase. Of course, new technologies, they avoided around 0.5 gigatons of CO2 emissions. And for this reason, it's important, and as Mr. Stambolis mentioned before, like when we talk about renewables, EVs and heat pumps, we see a new era that's developing there with low carbon emissions options. Looking a little bit more on the electricity sector and how we see on the future around our scenarios. And within the IEA, we have quite focus on what is happening in 2030, in 2050, and we have different scenarios there. So in our reference scenario, what we expect to happen on the electricity sector, as expected, we see a tectonic shift towards solar wind. This figure is at a global level. So of course, for example, in advanced economies, it can be even more optimistic on solar on wind versus what is happening on India and other Asian markets. Solar and wind will be front runners on this growth. A small growth we see on natural gas, and a big decline of coal due to the different policies for phasing out coal-fired plants. And this has a result on the CO2 emission sector. So what we see on the power sector CO2 emissions, we see that already a peak took place last year, and this is how we see the split between emerging markets and advanced economies. Moving a little bit on the higher level from the power sector to what we see as a total, as a whole, as an energy sector. So on this year's outlook, for the first time in our reference scenario, we see a peak on fossil fuel demand coming on this decade. Just to clarify, what we take on board in terms of policies are policies that already have been legislated. It's not a guess, it's not that what announcement, it's everything that is on board, and it has been, they are part of legislative document. So what we see there, it's a big on fossil fuel demand in our reference scenario to take place before 2030. And as you observe from the figure, there is a big drop on oil demand, mainly driven from the electrification that is happening on transportation sector. Coal demand is declining too due to the shift to solar panels, and we see a much more moderate growth of natural gas. The key reason of the revision of mainly of the natural gas outlook, it's what we have seen on uncertainties there due to Russian invasion, plus has an impact on natural gas prices, and also that a lot of countries are shifting away for energy security reasons from natural gas. So talking a little bit about a hot topic, I will say, about electric cars. So in 2022, we do expect that the market share of electric cars, it has been monitored and recorded, it reached around 15%. A big growth, it came from China and also United States. And in 2023, already our estimate is that they will reach roughly 14 million. So we see a 40% growth versus this year. It's going to happen. Once again, China will be the leader there, but we see big growth from Europe and also especially United States due to the new policies, for example, the Inflation Reduction Act, that they are pushing a lot towards electromobility. Just to keep in mind that like this year, we expect 1 out of 3 cars sold in China to be electric. So we see a tectonic shift there. And when we talk in terms of if this is happening only of cars, definitely the answer it's no. We see quite big growth there on other different segments. We see, for example, on 2-3-wheelers, as expected, because the upfront additional cost is quite low, but we see also a lot of things are happening on buses and even on truck segments. Just to notice that this year, like the new sales of electric urban buses in Europe, they surpassed the diesel share. So we see more and more ambitious plans, not only affecting light duty vehicles, but also heavy duty segments. So passing a little bit more and to see what is the impact on shares, and of course, what is the impact on oil demand and why it's important, the electrification that is happening on the transportation sector. So this was our outlook last year. By 2030, we were expecting a share of over 20% over the end of this decade, and we will revise quite considerably this year for multiple reasons. First of all, we see what is happening on the current development markets in China. I mentioned earlier the IRA policy in the United States. So what we expect is that in the stated policy scenario, we do expect by 2030 at global level to reach that 1 out of 3 cars to be electric. Of course, this has multiple implications for the whole energy system and particularly for oil markets. And what we do project and estimate is that this transition it's going to reduce by over 5 million barrels per day the consumption. So talking about the transformation and policies, of course, what we need to keep in mind when we are talking about clean energy transitions, it's about what is going to happen from the infrastructure side of view and manufacturing capacity. So, of course, what it matters, it's demand and how we make consumers and governments to push these clean technologies. But the key question there always remains if the supply side it's well prepared about to cover what it's needed. So comparing the different announcements that are and projects that are on the pipeline side versus what we see in our net zero scenario, and this is a scenario that it's 1.5 degrees scenario, and we reach carbon neutrality within the energy sector by 2050. And comparing this versus the different announcements, we see, for example, in the case of solar panels, what is already in place, it's well advanced, and it's enough in order to supply what is needed. battery side, it's lagging behind, and additional progress is needed to happen on electrolyzers side and the lithium production side. What we need to keep in mind is that this is just a snapshot. We see more and more announcements happening like over the last months. We are seeing more companies to come on board, and we are quite optimistic that whenever the demand side is there, the supply, it will be there in order to meet this demand. And of course, what governments are needed to keep in mind is what I'm going to show on the next slide. It's about that we are shifting from a market that it was mainly, how to say, geopolitically, it was on the aspect of oil and gas resources to something that we talk about materials and where the different processing and technological manufacturers it's going to sit out there. So from this slide, what I want to pass to the audience and to keep in mind is that, like, as you may see in terms of, for example, for mineral processing side, apart from the resources side, what is key there, it's also the processing capacity there. We see the dominant role of China on key materials, on cobalt, lithium, mainly for batteries, of copper when we are talking about any kind of cable that it affects both wind turbines, electric engines, and also grids. Of course, material production is key, aluminium and steel. Both of them, for example, aluminium, it's used on different uses and even on transportation sector. And technology manufacturer, we see a clear role playing on China. Of course, Europe, it started moving ahead on some technologies. Therefore, for example, heat pumps, they do expect Europe to increase to double its share by 2030. But when we talk about the political situation, about how the concentration it looks like, it's important for us to keep in mind the role of China out there. Thank you very much for your attention, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Apostolos. Apostolos has agreed to answer questions, so if there are any questions, Charles. There are two mics. You have to stand up and go to one of the two mics, please.
Hello, Apostolos, you have said that you expect fossil fuel demand to peak over the next few years. Is the gate. But then you showed a slide which shows gas demand to carry on increasing to 2050 modestly, but increasing. At the same time, the oil demand, at least for the next few years, is increasing quite rapidly, actually, and doesn't show any sign of coming down. So both oil and both gas are going upwards. Are you actually, when you say fossil fuels, you mean coal and not necessarily oil or gas? Please clarify.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So I mean, as you see gas on the figure that I showed previously, it's a really modest growth by 2030, and then it follows a slightly declining trend. On oil, it's already like there is already a slowdown there, and coal, it's a big decline. So summing up of all of these fossil fuels, we do expect a peak by 2030. This is our our last year's assessment. I mean, now we're working on the revision there, and probably it will come even earlier, depending on, given that more and more ambitious targets have put in place. So what we need to keep in mind there, it's what I showed on the first slide, how tectonic shift to clean energy technologies we're seeing. And this will have huge implications for the fossil fuel markets, and especially oil and coal.
Hi, Stelios Bikos from the Energy Competence Center. A similar question on the same graph. The natural gas curve shows a kink right at the time when the peak also appears in coal and oil. And the question is how natural that is and how artificial it might be. Thank you.
I mean, this, of course, it's at the global level picture. So as you can imagine, like on emerging economies, the natural gas, it will be grow faster compared to that, mainly driven by the industrial capacity that it's needed to be added in key regions like China and India. And we expect a big drop on the advanced economies, mainly driven by what is happening, for example, in the EU, where we see heat pumps to take a big portion of the natural gas demand that it's directed on buildings side. We see also other technologies to penetrate on industry. So, I mean, what we project as a total is that like a really modest growth on natural gas over the coming decade. And of course, both gas and coal, it's under attack on the power sector, mainly driven by what is happening on solar and wind. Like in the past, we are talking about like that solar and wind are need policies in order to penetrate the market. But now we see that solar, it's mainly competitive across almost all markets in order to compete directly gas-fired plants. So we're moving from a situation that like it was mainly policy-driven, that it's market-driven, the penetration of solar and both wind in quite a few cases and in the market in order to compete directly with the gas-fired plants. And what you need to keep in mind is that when you're comparing, for example, on the power sector, it's not only the capacity that it matters, it's also how much you run your plant. So this it's going to affect also the utilization ratio of different gas-fired plants across the globe and has implication on the gas consumption within the power sector.
Okay. One more question. We have time? No. Okay. So, Apostolos, thank you very much. It was a brilliant presentation. You managed in a very short period of time to give us a good glimpse of what's happening globally, and we liked very much the electric vehicle presentation at the end. So thank you so much, and of course you can follow us for the rest of the day or tomorrow, and would like to have your comments at the end of this conference. So from Paris we go back here, and let me ask Mr. Komninos Komnios, who is a member of RAE. RAE is the Regulatory Energy Authority Energy Authority for Regulation. It has now expanded its task, and he will tell you more about this. Komninos is a lawyer specializing in energy law and many other things. So he is going to be talking about Greece mainly and the authority which he represents. So, Komninos, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Okay, this seems to work. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is with great pleasure that I stand before you today as member of the Regulatory Authority of Energy, recently renamed, as Kostis said, as Regulatory Authority for Energy, Water and Waste Management, at this 14th Southeast Europe Energy Dialogue Conference. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Kostis Stamboulis, who is the Chairman and Executive Director of IENE, for his tireless efforts in organizing this crucial event that brings together key stakeholders in the energy sector. As we embark on this collective journey towards building a modern regulatory authority, our focus remains steadfast on empowering consumers and championing the public interest. The European Green Deal stands as one of the 6 priorities for the European Commission from 2019 to 2024. With the ambition to lead the way towards a climate-neutral continent, Europe strives to transform into a modern and resource-efficient economy. At the heart of the European Green Deal are 3 fundamental principles that I have written here on the presentation that drive the clean energy transition. First and foremost, it aims to ensure a secure and affordable energy supply throughout the European Union. Secondly, the European Green Deal emphasizes the development of a fully integrated, interconnected, and digitalized energy market across the European Union. Additionally, the deal aims to accelerate the transition to a power sector primarily fueled by renewable energy resources, further advancing the EU's commitment to a greener and more sustainable future. Aligned with the European Green Deal, which, as said, stands as one of the key priorities of the European Commission, we strive to integrate these principles into our national regulatory framework. In a rapidly evolving energy landscape characterized by the energy transition and geopolitical challenges, the regulatory authority has identified 4 key priorities for 2023: security of supply, the protection of the consumer, digitizing procedures, and accelerating the green transition. These priorities underscore our commitment to ensuring a sustainable, resilient, and equitable energy future for all. Allow me to elaborate on each of these priorities, starting with a crucial aspect of the security of supply. Turning our attention to the pressing need for security of supply, the regulatory authority has been at the forefront of proactive measures to ensure resilience in the face of potential disruption after the war in Ukraine. As the first EU member state to update the Preventive Action Plan and Emergency Action Plan for the gas and electricity sectors in 2022, Greece has demonstrated its commitment to preparedness and stability. In the context of strengthening consumer protection in the event of occurrence of disruptions in the demand and supply of energy, the plan considered concrete measures, called actions, related to the improvement of the regulatory framework to increase the use of existing gas infrastructure and to strengthen LNG availability in times of high risk. With that in mind, we have granted permits for the development of gas facilities in strategic locations across the country, including Alexandroupolis, Corinth, Volos, Thessaloniki, and Revithousa. In addition, we issued the pricing regulation for the Kavala underground storage facility. These strategic investments not only enhance our own energy security, but also position Greece as a vital transit hub and LNG getaway for Southeast and Central Europe. To further strengthen regional energy security, the regulatory authority has been actively involved in facilitating crucial infrastructure processes. We certified ICGB, the company operating the Greece-Bulgaria IGB gas interconnector, as the independent transmission operator, and moreover successfully completed the market test for the Greece-North Macedonia gas interconnector. Those milestones have solidified Greece's role as a trusted and reliable energy partner in the region. Additionally, our approval for the compression station in Komotini as part of the network development plan reinforces Bulgaria's energy security by ensuring a continuous flow of 5 billion cubic meters to our neighboring country. These accomplishments highlight Greece's commitment to regional cooperation and its unwavering dedication to maintaining energy security, stability, and reliability in the region. All these infrastructures allow Greece to act as a transit hub and LNG getaway for Southeast and Central Europe. Ensuring security for supply while increasing competition in the markets and ensuring affordable prices for the consumers as well is essential. In that respect, strengthening market transparency and supervision is at the core of our regulatory framework. Transparency, as you all know, is vital to ensuring fair competition, market integrity, and the efficient allocation of resources. Through reporting mechanisms and alignment with international best practices, we promote transparency and comparability across the industry. As part of our efforts to strengthen market transparency and supervision, the regulatory authority has implemented robust measures to ensure effective oversight of the Greek wholesale electricity market. You can see here some of the essential tools that we have developed, for example, these cumulative demand-supply curves and the energy mix tools. Needless to say, all these tools are accessible through our portal. Moreover, at the regulatory authority, we also believe that the energy consumers deserve transparency, fairness, and empowerment. And to this end, we have implemented several initiatives to safeguard their interests. One such initiative is the development of the price comparison tool, energycost.gr, which enables consumers to access and compare energy products available in the market, empowering them to make informed choices based on their individual needs. In partnership with consumer associations, we are running an energy saving awareness campaign. You can see it here, www.electricitycostcalculator.gr. This campaign is actually aiming at helping consumers to reduce electricity cost by making small changes to their daily habits. The awareness campaign, which has been running for some time now, includes a video which suggests quick and easy ways for consumers to save energy, a booklet, and also a dedicated website where consumers can calculate the energy and cost of using the household appliances. To enhance transparency and eliminate ambiguity, we have also introduced standardized templates for supply contracts and consumption bills, ensuring clarity and understanding for consumers. What is also new is that RAI has taken I would call it pioneering step by establishing a very specific billing database of the retail sector, which is the first in Europe. This database allows us to scrutinize electricity suppliers' tariffs systematically, ensuring that the consumers are not subject to unfair pricing practices. By championing consumer protection and promoting transparency, we empower individuals to actively participate in the energy market, fostering a more equitable and consumer-centric energy landscape. Furthermore, and this is what I'm going to refer to right now, maybe you know about it, at least the Greeks among you, we have an innovative online platform, myrai.gr, which serves as a direct communication channel between consumers and energy suppliers. The purpose is to facilitate transparent and efficient interaction, and in 2022, this platform recorded an impressive number of more than 12,000 consumer complaints, reaffirming the significance of providing more accessible channels for addressing consumer concerns promptly. Of these complaints, almost 11,000 relate to electricity and 1,000 complaints relate to gas. In the same direction, we are very pleased to announce the upcoming launch of our whistleblowing platform, which is also new, energywhistleblowing.gr, which is currently, of course, under construction and set to be operational by September 2023. This platform is designed to strengthen public interest assurance in the energy sector by providing a safe and confidential channel for reporting any misconduct, fraud, or unethical behavior related to energy activities. We are also thrilled to announce the launch of ENOMOS, the Energy Mediation Services Coordinator System. ENOMOS represents a significant milestone in our ongoing efforts to enhance consumer protection and resolve energy-related disputes in a fair and efficient manner. ENOMOS will function as an alternative dispute resolution entity aimed at providing consumers with a speedy, fast, cost-effective, and less formal dispute resolution mechanism according to the Alternative Dispute Resolution Directive. Going to the next pillar of our policy, digitizing procedures, we recognize the transformative power of technology in stemming administrative processes, and throughout digitalization, we reduce bureaucratic barriers, enhance data accuracy, and respond swiftly to emerging challenges in the energy sector. We have developed online platforms and portals that allow market participants to submit applications online, saving time and resources while enhancing accuracy and traceability. And finally, the urgency of addressing climate change and transitioning to a low-carbon economy has never been more pressing, not only in Europe but all over the world. Energy efficiency and renewable energy are crucial solutions for our current energy crisis. They reduce energy cost, boost domestic added value, create jobs, serving as pillars for long-term growth for our country. By embracing these no-regret options, we can address the challenges we face while building a sustainable and prosperous future. The regulatory authority recognizes the paramount importance of accelerating the green transition, and we have taken significant strides to facilitate the deployment of renewable energy and energy storage projects. Leveraging digital transformation, we have streamlined and expedited the licensing process, resulting in the issuance of approximately 89 gigawatts of renewable energy producer certificates and around 24 gigawatts of storage project licenses. These remarkable results propel Greece towards achieving its renewable energy targets and pave the way for a sustainable and resilient energy system. To complement renewable energy integration, the regulatory authority has also focused on the development of the electricity network. By approving the comprehensive development plan submitted by ADMIE, the Independent Power and Transmission Operator, and the DIE, the Hellenic Electricity Distribution Network Operator, we are enabling the seamless integration of renewable energy sources into the grid. Furthermore, we have established the necessary infrastructural framework for storage units, hybrid stations, and offshore wind farms, reinforcing Greece's commitment to the diversified and green energy mix. These forward-thinking measures not only enhance the penetration of clean energy, but also create economic opportunities, stimulate job growth, and deliver tangible benefits to the consumers. Let me highlight some significant investments that have been planned. 4.7 billion by ADMIE, 2.2 billion euro for the distribution network, including also the implementation of smart meters by the DIE, 1.27 billion by DESFA, and 0.8 billion by the natural gas distribution network operators. In conclusion, the regulatory authority plays a pivotal role in building a modern and sustainable energy landscape. As we expand our activities to include water and waste management, we remain unwavering in our dedication to serving the public interest and safeguarding the citizens of Greece. This 14th Energy Dialogue Conference serves as a testament to our collective commitment to advancing the energy dialogue in Southeast Europe. It is through events like these that we can collectively shape policies, drive progress, and forge a brighter and more sustainable energy future for all. Once again, I need to express my sincere appreciation to Mr. Kostis Stamboulis for his visionary leadership and commitment to promoting energy dialogue and collaboration. And before I conclude, I would like to take a moment to express my appreciation to the President of the Regulatory Authority, Professor Athanasios Dagoumas. Under his exemplary leadership, the authority has emerged as a beacon of excellence, at least this is what we feel, driving innovation, fostering transparency, and championing the public interest. Ladies and gentlemen, and esteemed guests, let us seize this opportunity to exchange knowledge, ideas, and experiences. I am confident that by leveraging our collective expertise and working hand in hand, we can overcome the challenges ahead and create a prosperous and inclusive energy landscape for Southeast Europe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Please stay there in case there are questions. Thank you, Komninos. Thank you very much for your kind words.
Thank you very much.
I think you overdone this a little, but truly, RAE, Regulatory Energy Authority, as we all know, has pioneered a lot of consumer-friendly services over the last 18 months. And I think as the crisis emerged in Greece, RAE played a key role because the consumer, and this goes also for the companies, that the market players had a place to go to find credible information and check facts and figures. And I think this is a great service, and this was done fairly quickly. Although you've been working, I mean, the new management has been working on this since it started, the fruits of your work started appearing at the right time. And this has been very well, has been welcomed by the market. So please, are there any questions? It was an excellent presentation, a lot of information. Now you know what's happening in Greece. Please come. to one of the microphones and please say your name.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Komnenos, I would like to ask you, nobody can deny, of course, that the Russo-Ukrainian war affected in many ways every country around the globe. But especially in Greece, how far we are from achieving Green Deal goals, of course, and all other RISE goals for the future, for example, for the next 10 years maybe. Are we far away from that goals? Thank you.
Actually, no. Given that we are not that industrialized as an economy, the fact is that we are very optimistic in reaching our goals. The COVID crisis has helped a lot in that respect, of course, but given the problems created by Ukraine and the fact that we had to turn back into using the lignite, for example, for producing power, despite that fact, it seems that, of course, this is a matter of ministerial policy, but still I see, and I'm very optimistic that we are going to reach the targets. And actually, there are studies of the European Commission that are supporting this view.
Okay.
The regulatory authority has never a lot of questions, given that we talk a lot about policy and Greek policy. I wish you all the best in the discussions that are going to proceed. Thank you very much.
Okay. So now we go to our next speaker, who is Dr. Panagiotis Papastamatiu. He's going to talk about wind energy. And although the subject is being discussed in one of the sessions tomorrow, he could not make it tomorrow. And because wind was a missing part in the whole renewables discussion, which is going to take place tomorrow, I've asked him to join us today. And Panagiotis, thank you very much. And he's going for accepting at short notice of invitation. And he's going to talk to us about Europe, wind in Europe, and also in Greece. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hello.
And we're eager to hear what you have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize again for the short delay, Mr. Stambolis, and thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to say a few words about the wind energy in our neighborhood. Let's start with few things about the current status of wind energy in Europe. As you have seen, these are the statistics announced by our mother association, Wind Europe, which is the voice of renewal of wind energy in Europe. Within 2022, 17% of the electricity demand in Europe and UK has come from wind energy. The total onshore capacity of wind energy in Europe is 225 megawatt plus 30 gigawatt plus 30 gigawatt for offshore wind. Interestingly, our country, Greece, has been within the first 8 countries in terms of share participation of wind energy in the electricity demand. First, Denmark with 55%, and the 8th, Greece with 80, slightly less, 19 to 20% electricity demand coming from wind energy. Focusing a little bit more in our neighborhood, we will see here the share participation of wind in electricity demand, and I have highlighted with red boxes the countries of the Southeast Europe. Greece has the biggest, these are the countries among EU. Greece has the biggest percentage, as I told before, 19 to 20%. And then we have Croatia with 13%, Romania 12%, Turkey 10%, Italy 7%, Cyprus 6%, Bulgaria 4%, Hungary 1%, and Slovenia with very few megawatts, comprising slightly more than 0% of electricity demand coming from wind. However, if we see the aggregate, the cumulative capacity, the installed capacity of wind parks in these countries, you can see that number one is Turkey with almost 12 gigawatt of wind capacity installed. And then number two is Italy with slightly less, or again, almost 12 gigawatt wind parks installed in its territory. And then number three is our country, Greece, with 4.7 gigawatt. You can see the figures, the ranking of these countries, based on the cumulative installed capacity of wind parks. Another interesting figure here is that if you see the new installations of wind parks installed within 2022, meaning the last year, you can see that only Greece, Italy, and Turkey has installed new wind parks within 2022. Turkey installed 867 megawatt of new wind parks within 2022, Italy 526, and Greece 230 megawatt new wind parks within 2022. This is more or less the current status of wind energy in Southeast Europe. And when we're speaking about wind energy here, we need to have in our minds that, very generally speaking, if we speak very general, we can say that among all the countries around the Southeast Europe, Greece and the eastern coast of Turkey and the western coast of Turkey seems to have the most rich wind potential. So I'm tending to think that it is probable that most of the countries in our neighborhood will achieve their targets mainly based on other forms of renewables, while we need to expect that Greece, mainly Greece, will be the country which needs to exploit its wind potential at a larger extent than the other countries like Italy, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Albania, and the other countries of former Yugoslavia, plus Romania. This is mainly due to the very rich wind potential of the Aegean Sea, plus the western coast of Turkey and the eastern coast of Greece. Here you can see the evolution of the wind energy capacity in Greece. The main driver of this evolution is onshore wind parks on the mainland. And this is evident from here. This is the spatial distribution of wind capacity around Greece. As you can see, although based on the previous picture, the richest wind potential exists on our islands or on our Aegean Sea, the currently installed wind capacity are placed on the mainland. This is due to the lack of the interconnections of our islands, which will permit the further exploitation of their wind potential, plus the lack of offshore wind. However, the main conclusion and the main message out of the comparison of these two pictures is that if we want to have even cheaper energy, even cheaper electricity, and if we want to have the broader neighborhood as a green exporter in order to support the energy independence of Europe, it is for sure that Greece should exploit its wind potential in Aegean Sea, either on the sea or on the islands. This, in combination with the other forms of renewables in the neighboring countries, can put Balkans and the broader area as a very important piece in the energy dependence of Europe. From this point of view, I'm tending to think that wind energy is a kind of comparative advantage for Greece, because exploiting the wind energy of Aegean Sea and in general of Greece can be exported towards Europe mainly within the hours, during night, and in general within the hours, where the photovoltaics of the neighboring countries will not produce, mainly, I mean, during afternoons and during hours. The final message is that we need to combine everything, all the kind of renewables, together, of course, with energy efficiency and storage and grids, and exploit and have the installation, the appropriate installations where the richer source exists. This is the vehicle for us to achieve in a most economical way that decarbonization, to improve our energy dependence and be as a neighborhood and become very useful and very important for energy dependence of the whole Europe. This is the main message I would like to pass. And then again, I would like to thank for the invitation, and I will be at your disposal for any kind of discussion or further comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was brief, but very much on the point and a lot of useful information. You mentioned the islands, and of course, perhaps you could inform us on the latest interconnection, because most of the islands will be interconnected by 2028, including Crete and Dodecanese. So is this going to affect or is this going to help wider exploitation of wind energy potential, and to what extent?
For sure, up to now, this was the main bottleneck of the exploitation of the onshore wind on our islands. It is true that, and it is very good that the system operator has a very ambitious plan for interconnection of all the islands. This is based also on thorough studies which have been elaborated in the past from the Regulatory Authority of Energy. So I can say that all this area, onshore and offshore, can provide up to 2050 more than 15 to 20 gigawatt of wind energy. This is also the figure, 17 gigawatt, included in the scenario presented by the Hellenic Ministry of Energy. It is only a scenario, it is not a policy adopted already, for the target of offshore wind up to 2050. So yes, there is this ambitious plan. Yes, there are very important steps which has been already been implemented, like the interconnection of Crete and the interconnection of almost all, not all, but almost all the Cyclades Islands. So I think that at least Greece is in a good path to have full interconnection of the islands and exploit the wind potential on them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Dr. Yiguden from Turkey.
Thank you very much for this very informative presentation. I have a question regarding social acceptance. Now the new permits for wind power plants are in Turkey mainly in areas far away from the Western coast, because Western coast is the preferred vacation resort area for Turkish citizens, and the protest movements are quite strong, and it's very difficult to get. But you get the permit, but then the implementation of the projects getting difficult. How is the social acceptance in Greece?
I think we face the same challenge, let's say, not to call it problem, the same challenge. However, I have yes, there are issues of the local acceptance. However, I will say that I have the feeling that this is, at least in Greece, this is a general problem for any kind of productive investment. It is not a unique characteristic of wind energy. And maybe sometimes it is reasonable that when something new is going to happen in an area, there are questions and sometimes very hard reactions against anything new. not only specifically against wind energy. Now, what is the solution on that? I cannot think any other solutions than dialogue, and explaining with arguments, and in order to eliminate the fake news. Because yes, we face reactions. Yes, and sometimes these are very strong, but always they represent a small minority of the local society. This is evident from also the polls, the national polls, which have been implemented, a lot of such polls in Greece, which demonstrate a very high percentage of acceptance of wind energy and in general renewables, but also it is evident from our relations with the local societies. So I think that first, the strong minorities which has several, who may have different agendas, and they want to present fake news against wind energy will never be gained. But with dialogue, correct communication, answers to any kind of question can isolate these strong minorities and can provide arguments to the majority of the local people who simply do not know and simply have honest questions who needs answers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Panagiotis. I think that was very clear. And thank you very much for your contribution. And we hope to have you in our next meeting.
Thank you very much, I promise.
Okay, good. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, we completed this first introductory session. Before we go to the next one, which is the Ambassadors Forum, which very kindly John Roberts will moderate, I wanted to say, because several people referred to the background paper, this is the background paper we produced. We've sent this to the speakers and moderators, but it is available on the microsite of the conference. If you access the microsite of the conference, it says background paper. But in addition, we are going to send this again to all people who have registered at the conference. And thank you very much, John. Made it clear that you did not participate in that. So I now give the floor to you. And our speakers, the ambassadors are here, and you can proceed.